Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for watching another Jags podcast. Today we have a special fun video where we're going to be grading the other AFC South teams' draft picks. So I will try to be as unbiased as possible, but there's no guarantees it'll happen. Before we jump into it, make sure to follow us on Twitter. We're at Another Jags Pod. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, subscribe, all those things so you can stay up to date with all of our latest content. So without further ado, let's jump right in with the Colts pick. So starting off with the Colts didn't have a first-round pick this year. They traded their first-round pick for DeForest Buckner to the San Francisco 49ers, meaning that they wouldn't pick until the second round, and when they finally got that pick in the second round, they selected 34th overall Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver out of USC. Now, I kind of went back and forth on this pick a couple times. I wasn't sure how I really felt about it, and so I started watching film on him and watching him through different games, and I really still haven't established a solid opinion on him. He's kind of one of those tweener guys that could be good and could not be. He's 6'4", 223. His dad played in the NFL. He's got pedigree. He ran a 4.5 40, which is pretty fast for someone that's 6'4", 223. He went like 6 picks ahead of Chenault Jr., so that kind of gives you an idea of where he's at and where scouts kind of had him. He did have 1,200 yards his senior year, second-team All-American. Definitely a possession wide receiver. He does track deep balls well. He gets a lot of comparisons to Cortland Sutton, but he did take advantage of a lot of bad defenses last year. If you look at his film, he out-jumped a lot of smaller guys who didn't really read the ball very well in the air. But look, there's something to be said for 1,275 yards. I mean, that's pretty good. I do kind of wonder how he'll do in the NFL when he gets a press corner on him that's very aggressive. He didn't seem to have a great release at the line of scrimmage, which is something that is always a risk for big, tall red zone threats, but he definitely will be there when Phillip Rivers needs a red zone threat. I think combined him with T.Y. Hilton, it could be solid, but I'm not too scared of him. The next pick they had was they traded up to pick 41 in the second round to get Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor was one of the best running backs in this draft. Everybody wanted him if they could get him at the right pick. The Colts traded up because they felt like they wouldn't get him at their next pick, and they thought he was worth it. A 4.39 40. That's very good. 5'10 back, not the tallest guy in the world. That's okay for a running back. He gets Ryan Matthews comps, which ironically played with Phillip Rivers, so that could be a good thing for Phillip Rivers and the Colts. He had back-to-back seasons with 2,000 yards, which is very, very good. But the downside of that is that he's had almost 1,000 carries over the last 3 years at Wisconsin. And some people believe that running backs only have a certain amount of carries in their life, which is why they don't get drafted high and they don't last very long in the NFL. So to put 1,000 on you already is not a good sign for most running backs. Very patient runner. He waits for the hole. He doesn't have the greatest jump cut, but he does see gaps and lanes and is able to explode through them. 15 fumbles in his career isn't great. You know, a lot of NFL teams are going to be zeroing in on trying to get the ball out of his hands. And the biggest downside to him is he's not going to be a guy who gets you that tough 1 yard. So Phillip Rivers typically is a guy who likes to throw, right? And he's known for his passing and the passing yards. And to not have a back really that can pick up that 1 yard may hurt the Colts. Marlon Mack, okay. I mean, he's okay. He's an okay back, but they're probably going to use them more in the receiving game than he was used in college. The next pick was in the third round. They also selected a safety, number 85 overall, Julian Blackmon, who's out of Utah. And Julian Blackmon was projected to go a little bit later in the draft, like 4th to 6th round. So they definitely reached in the third round to get him. But he's got some things that make him attractive to teams. 6 foot, 187, that's good size for a safety. He's very, very good against the run. It's probably the best thing that he is good against the run. Did get moved from corner after getting beat a lot his sophomore year. Not the greatest coverage guy. Is good against the run. That'll help him, but isn't going to cover anyone down the field too much. He had 60 tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. Like I said, good against the run. He did have a knee injury in December. I think that's what kind of made his projections kind of fall. If it wasn't for that knee injury, I think that he would have not been drafted so late. He might have been a little bit higher up. And the last thing that's a knock on him is he was just absolutely torched by USC and Michael Pittman Jr., ironically enough. So I don't think he's going to factor too much into the every down situation for the Colts. He definitely will be a special teams guy for sure. So that is something to look forward to. I'm not going to get into the other picks because I just frankly don't have time to watch film on every single 6th and 5th round guy. But I would like to mention Jacob Eason, who was drafted in the 4th round by the Colts, which I think is a little high. If you remember Jacob Eason, he was projected to be a perennial pro, went to Georgia. Supposed to be a very, very good quarterback coming out of high school. Lost his job to Fromm, who was also drafted in this draft. And then he had to transfer to Washington. And again, just very raw quarterback. 6'6", he's big, that people like. But he reminds me a lot of Jake Luton, the guy the Jags drafted in the 6th round. So spending a 4th round pick on a project quarterback, I'm not a big fan, but I kind of get that they're kind of putting all in their eggs in the basket of Phillip Rivers, and so they drafted mostly offense to help him out in this draft. Overall, I'll give this grade a C+, because like I said, they kind of reached to get guys to help Phillip Rivers now. They traded up to get Jonathan Taylor. They got Michael Pittman Jr., guys that could come in and help Rivers this year, trying to win this year because Rivers doesn't have a lot of time left. And anytime you're drafting like that, it doesn't bode well for the future. And you kind of want to think toward the future in the draft, in my opinion. So that's why I gave him a C+. Not a strong draft, I feel like, for the Colts. Admittedly, I'm not a big Colts fan. I actually dislike the Colts more than any other team in the AFC South. But I am trying to be unbiased here. So C+. Colts fans, they can live with it. All right, the next team we're going to look at is the Tennessee Titans. And coming off of an impressive run in the playoffs last year where they got to the AFC Championship game, they found themselves picking pretty late in the draft this year. And honestly, I think considering where they picked, I think they did a pretty good job. And I say that reluctantly because I never root for the Titans to do anything well. But at 29, they got Isaiah Wilson, who was the right tackle on the Georgia offensive line. You remember Andrew Thomas was the left tackle on the line. That went much earlier. But Isaiah Wilson has got a very, very good frame, and he's very, very big, and you can't teach big. 6'6", 350. He is kind of a project player, but he's pretty good in the run game. He does a little bit to be desired in the pass protection, but considering Tennessee probably wants to run the ball anyways, I think it's okay. I mean, elite size. I think he's going to end up being a pretty good player, and he could be a plug-and-play player sooner than people think. He does lose balance at times, and his footwork's a little wonky sometimes, but those are some things that kind of get worked out as you become a pro and get some good coaching. So I think that was a pretty decent pick for the Titans in the first round, especially at pick 29. In the second round, they came back and they drafted Christian Fulton, cornerback from LSU. And Christian Fulton was one of my guys I had on my radar for the Jags to draft pretty early in the second round, and you see the Titans, they ended up getting him at 61. Christian Fulton has got all the size that you want at a corner. 6 foot, 197. That's just a little bit smaller than CJ Henderson, who the Jags took at 9. Fulton he did have some drug issues in 2017, or like failed a drug test or something like that. But he came back and played pretty nicely for LSU, and he's a pretty nice player. And specifically, he played pretty good in that Alabama game. He shut down those Alabama receivers, and anyone who watches this knows that I'm pretty big on those Alabama receivers. I think they're pretty good. But Christian Fulton is big, athletic corner. He plays the hands well. He plays the eyes well. He's good in press. Not great in deep zone coverage, but the Titans like to play a lot of cover one man. So I think Christian Fulton actually fits that profile pretty well. He's not polished player. He's not a fluid player, but he is, I think, going to be a decent player. And because of his size, it'll allow him to line up on the edge. I don't know if he's a cornerback 1, but definitely a cornerback 2. And he could definitely come in and do some things to help this team. All right, and then in the third round, the Titans actually came and drafted, surprisingly, at Appalachian State at 93, Darrington Evans. And Darrington Evans is a very, very fast back. I think he ran a 4.3, something like that. A smaller guy, 5'10", but very, very fast and strong for his size. I mean, he did 20 reps of the bench press. Unfortunately, I think due to his size, he's going to be pretty much relegated to just running the outside zone, which is okay because you have Derrick Henry who can run everything, right? And he's going to come in and spell. I can imagine that he will improve his catching ability to help out of the backfield on swings and screens and things like that. He's not going to be able to run inside the tackles, but he will give a change of pace for the Titans and, special teams, kick returns, things like that. He could be, a difference maker for this Titans team. I think the Titans were a little fluky with their run last year. I think Derrick Henry really put the team on his back, and I don't like running backs doing that over and over and over again. So I could see the Titans kind of having a dip year this year, but the players they drafted do kind of set them up nicely for the future. So not a bad draft. I mean, the rest of their picks, I could take or leave. I don't think they're going to get anything out of Cole McDonald, the quarterback out of Hawaii, and Chris Jackson was just a flyer DB from Marshall. But overall, I think Vrabel did a nice job setting himself up and using these picks where, in reality, 29 is a pretty bad pick in the first round. And I thought he did pretty good with it. So overall, I'm going to give the Titans grade a B+. I thought they did pretty good considering where they were drafting and could help them out in the future. All right, guys, and the last team we're going to look at is the Houston Texans. And the Houston Texans did not have a lot of draft capital this year. If you remember, they traded a first-round pick for Laramie Tunsil, who they now have made the highest-paid left tackle in the game, getting paid a lot of money. But they did end up getting a second-round pick when they traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. And with that pick, at number 40, they got Ross Blacklock, who is a D lineman at TCU. And I got to be real with you, I'm not a big fan of his. The Achilles injury he had, I never like Achilles injuries while on players. Those are tough to come back from. He was first team all Big 12, 40 tackles, 9 for loss, 3.5 sacks, 12 starts. Big 12 defense, how do you even really judge? I mean, everyone plays so spread out and wide open, it's hard to really know how that's going to translate to the next level. He is very good at getting into gaps, into crossing the offensive linemen's faces and stunting and moving and all those sorts of things. However, if you're going to ask him to hold up a gap or a two gap or something like that, he hasn't shown he can really do that. That's a little risky for me, taking an interior defensive lineman that can't hold a gap. But if he works on his game a little bit, he might be able to play a 3 technique in the NFL. Not sure, but I wasn't a big fan of that pick. I know a lot of people had him high on the board, but I'm going to ding the Texans just on that pick. But I like everything else they did. I'm going to give them a C+, in lieu of the fact that they drafted a D lineman I don't really like. They came back in round 3 at 90 and drafted Jonathan Grenard, who I really, really like. Edge rusher at Florida. Very, very productive last year. First team all SEC, 15.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks. That's crazy. He's very, very explosive. He had a very, very good career at Florida. He's a transfer from Louisville. The only knock I would say against him is he was playing on a defense with a lot of speed. I mean, there was speed all over that team, and they would bring Todd Grantham would bring exotic blitz packages and pressures from all over the field that allowed a lot of people to make plays in the backfield. So everyone on the defense had pretty good numbers. But overall, I mean, I think Jonathan Grenard was one of the steals of the draft. I was pretty big on him going into the draft, and I think that the Texans got themselves a pretty good D end there. Again, they only had 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. That's not usually good for your team, but again, they did get Laramie Tunsil, so that is the counterbalance. In the 4th round at pick 126, they did go Charlie Heck, offensive tackle out of UNC, and I didn't know much about Charlie Heck going into this video, so I did a little research, watched a little bit of film, and I kind of like Charlie Heck. I really do. His dad's an offensive line coach. Always love kids whose dads coach in the NFL. I mean, that just means that they're probably going to be good and their technique's probably pretty sound. Very, very big kid, 6'8", 311. I mean, that's monstrous. He plays right tackle at UNC. Did a very, very good job at UNC. And in reality, he is a guy that could develop into a starting right tackle. He won't start next year. But I think the year after, when he kind of gets his feet under him, that he will be a starter in the NFL. He needs to work on his pass protection. When he kicks out of his stance, he opens up a little too much, and that allows defensive ends with a good inside move to kind of counter him. But I think he will end up being a pretty good offensive lineman. The last guy we're going to look at is in the 4th round. Again, they got another pick in the 4th round, and they drafted John Reed, cornerback from Penn State. And there wasn't a lot on him. He's a nickel corner. He's 5'10", not very big, 187. Could play the nickel for some teams, could play that DJ Hayden role, but very, very weak in run support. Very, very inadequate when it comes to covering downfield. I mean, trying to match up with some of these big-time receivers and some of these big-time guys that play in the red zone, it's going to be pretty much impossible for him. He probably won't be in on those downs. But he does have fluid hips. He had a bunch of drops too, so I was surprised he was drafted that high. But you know, they must have seen something they liked in his film. Overall, I give them a C+. They didn't have a lot of picks to work with, so it's not really fair. I mean, 1 second-round pick and 1 third-round pick, but I like what they did in the 3rd and 4th round, and I really like Grenard and I really like Heck, and because of that, I think their grade got bumped up to a C+ because I think they did get some draft steals there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Share it if you want. I would appreciate that. We appreciate you guys. Give us your comments. We love your comments. We're going to be doing some podcasts and some film breakdowns here coming up soon. So stay tuned for all of that new information. Thank you guys so much. We love you guys. And as always, go Jags.